In royal times, death was not the worst fate. Being taken by a duke was. When a father failed to repay his debt, his daughter was not spared. She was claimed as compensation, as property, a living payment. This is the story of Rosalia. Her father's debt has already sealed her destiny. The duke is coming for her. So Rosalia makes a choice worse than fear. She abandons herself. She cuts her hair, binds her body, and steals the identity of her own brother, a gambler, a failure, a man who ruined everything. She becomes Antonio. Every breath is borrowed. Every word could betray her. One mistake, and she is no longer human in the eyes of the law. But the duke is not fooled easily. He watches. He questions. He gets close, too close. And Rosalia realizes something far more terrifying than discovery. The duke is drawn to her, not knowing who she truly is, not knowing what she's hiding. Is it suspicion or desire? If he uncovers the truth, she will be destroyed. If he doesn't, she may fall in love with the very man who can ruin her. Because this is not just a story of survival. It is a dangerous romance. A psychological game. A lie that grows heavier with every heartbeat. And in this world, love is the deadliest secret of all. Watch till the end. Because once the Duke starts looking at her like this, there is no escape. And some episodes don't end with answers. They end with obsession. Episode 1. A man dressed in royal attire sat with his head lowered, one fist resting against his temple while his fingers tapped slowly, rhythmically. Several papers lay spread across the desk before him, untouched. The room was steeped in silence. Behind him stood a young boy, dressed smartly and neatly, posture straight and attentive, waiting patiently for an order from his master. The man had green hair, striking green eyes, and a perfectly chiseled jawline. Without lifting his head, he spoke. "Excuse me, sir. Did you call?" There was a pause. The boy hesitated, then asked again softly, "You called me?" The man finally responded, "Called for you?" "Of course, yes." The man seated at the desk was Duke Ruggleset Empire, Klaus de Balthazar. At once, the servant stepped forward. At the same moment, the Duke rose from his chair and turned to face him. The room was so silent that the sound of their footsteps echoed clearly. Suddenly, without warning, the Duke pushed the young boy back against the wall. His hand slammed beside the boy's head, pinning him there. Their faces were dangerously close, the Duke's presence overwhelming and threatening. The young boy dropped his head in fear. "I'm curious about something," the Duke said coldly. Still staring at the floor, the young servant replied nervously, "Pardon me, Your Grace." Curious about what? Instead of answering, the Duke leaned closer and began to sniff him. The action confused the boy. Then the Duke whispered sharply into his ear, anger thick in his voice. "Didn't I tell you not to wear that shitty perfume?" He stepped back slightly and said firmly, "Answer me." "I don't wear any perfume, Your Grace," the boy replied fearfully. That response only made the Duke angrier. "So all of you dare to defy me," he snapped, his voice filled with fury, "when I have already allowed you to repay your debt by serving me." He shouted the name with authority. Antonio D. Hissink. Hearing his own name sent a wave of fear through the young servant. "I told you," the Duke continued, his voice low and dangerous. "I am a master at finding hidden things. I will discover your secrets." Antonio's heart pounded violently. Did he really discover that I am actually a woman? She thought to herself. Her eyes shifted sideways unconsciously. "Stop trying to avert my gaze," the Duke ordered. He struck his hand against the wall again, trapping her once more. "You are only making me want to dig even deeper." Curiosity and anger mingled across the Duke's face. A few strands of his green hair fell onto his forehead, and even in his rage, he looked dangerously charming. Antonio, who was, in truth, a girl disguised as a boy, felt her thoughts spiral. Is he bisexual? She wondered. I disguised myself to avoid exactly this kind of situation. Lost in her thoughts and fear, she failed to notice one thing. The Duke had not looked away even once. His eyes were fixed on her, sharp and unyielding, as though he were already peeling away the layers of her disguise. 2 to 3 months earlier, a glass bottle shattered on the floor, the sharp sound echoing through the dimly lit room. A young woman with long green hair and green eyes startled violently. She was dressed in a beautiful blue gown, clearly a nightgown, her expression frozen in shock. Standing across from her was a man wearing a white shirt and brown trousers, clothes commonly worn by royals and nobles of the house. He shouted at her. "Why is the rum gone? Rosalia! Rosalia!" Rosalia de Hessink stood silently, staring at him in her blue nightgown. The boy shouted again, his voice slurred with anger. "Get me more booze." Rosalia looked confused, as if she were already exhausted by this endless drama. She was the adopted daughter of the house of Baron Hessink, Rosalia de Hessink, and the boy before her was the biological son of Baron Hessink, the heir to the house. He began shouting at her again. "What is it now? Did you already run out of money? I know father left you a lot. Where did it all go?" Inside her mind, Rosalia panicked. "No, no." But aloud she said, disbelief filling her voice, "Are you serious? You squandered it all?" He laughed bitterly and shouted again, "Well then, go find me something we can sell." Rosalia felt not only disappointed but deeply sad. She turned away and began walking, her thoughts racing. Our family has declined ever since Father Baron Hessing collapsed. Or died, she thought. Lost in those thoughts, she entered the kitchen. Her eyes fell on a sharp blade. Not a knife, a dagger. She picked it up. With the dagger in her hand, she walked back toward the boy. This man, the successor of Baron Hessing, was strong in body yet completely hollow inside. A total loser who had made her life unbearable. He had long since abandoned any sense of humanity. When he saw Rosalia approaching with the dagger, fear finally crossed his face. "What are you doing?" he shouted. "Why are you holding a knife? No, a dagger. Stay away." Rosalia spoke only in her mind. "It's about time I get rid of him." She raised the dagger as if she were about to strike. The boy screamed, sweat pouring down his face as he stumbled backward, terrified. "Stop! Stop!" he cried, squeezing his eyes shut. But when he finally opened them, something was wrong. Rosalia was standing calmly. Her long green hair was gone. Confused, the boy looked down and realized she had cut it off. Rosalia stepped forward and placed the severed hair into his hands. "Didn't you just ask me to find something we could sell?" she said quietly. "This is the last thing I have left. Take it. Sell it." Without hesitation or shame, the boy grabbed the hair and walked out of the house. After a brief pause, he turned back and spat an insult at her. "Cold-hearted," Rosalia repeated softly, almost to herself. "I am cold-hearted." A question lingered in her mind. Am I? Because I'm capable of being much harsher if my life depends on it. The thought made her feel strangely awkward as she stood alone in the silent house. On the southern streets, the cold cut through the air like a blade. Antonio staggered forward when suddenly 2 men came marching toward him. They blocked his path, their lips curling into devilish smiles. "You'll never be able to come back, Antonio," one of them sneered. "The creditors will be waiting for you, after all." They grabbed him roughly. "It's time to pay your gambling debt, Mr. Antonio." Antonio was terrified. He looked painfully weak now, dark circles hollowing his eyes. Rosalia was unaware of his condition. A few days later, she stood in her room, dressing quietly, her thoughts heavy. I'm not sure if he's even alive. She bound her chest tightly with a cloth, wincing slightly, then pulled on oversized clothes. As expected, she muttered to herself. These clothes are a bit big now. Once fully dressed as a man, she stood near a broken window and peeked outside. He'll be arriving soon, she thought. She was wearing Antonio's clothes. She was waiting for the man who held her life in his hands. Rosalia de Hessink, she thought bitterly. In the novel, Rosalia was merely a background character. She was sold to the Duke to pay off debts, used, and eventually died. And I just happened to be reborn as her. The Duke would try to take her as a maid in order to settle the debt. It's already been 3 years since I entered this novel, she realized. My life now is moving exactly along Rosalia's timeline. She took a deep breath. I've been preparing for this very moment, she whispered. Unlike the novel, I plan on staying alive. Rosalia from the original story fell in love with the Duke. Foolish, she thought. Very foolish. There are plenty of ways to pay off debt, she said to herself. The first rule is to avoid catching the Duke's attention. That was why she was dressed as a man. She lived in a grand mansion, but it was barely maintained. Its glory long faded. Soon, a man appeared at the estate. It was the Duke. He glanced at the mansion and remarked coolly, "What a humble abode." Beside him stood another man, who said respectfully, "Yes, Your Grace. This is the correct address." The Duke surveyed the building. Selling this estate won't even cover half what Baron Hessing owed. The man beside him checked the documents and began calculating. These records state that the Baron passed away. His eldest son, Antonio, inherited the estate. He also had a daughter, Rosalia de Hessing, reported to have died of illness a few days ago. What a pity, the Duke replied flatly. At that moment, the door creaked open. Rosalia, disguised as Antonio, stepped outside. "You must be Duke Klaus de Balthazar," she said, looking directly at him. She extended her hand. "It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. I am the son of the late Baron Hessing." Dressed in men's clothing, she looked unexpectedly delicate, almost cute. Inside her mind, she made herself a promise. "I will never fall in love with the Duke.